Hi everyone, this is Tanya Perez. I think we're ready to get started. First, before we get going, I think we're going to introduce everyone that's on the line or here in the room. Again, myself, Tanya Perez. I'm a branch chief with the ACE Accounts branch in the Trade Transformation Office. We have Edward Thurman here from CORE in Trade Policy and Programs, and then I also have Michael Yang, my business analyst, who will be driving during this demo. So I'm trying to make sure that the screen is set up and you can see it, so give us 1 second here. But basically today what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the new screen. So if you were to log into the Legacy ACE portal as you do today, this is what you would see after the March 16th deployment. So everything will start the same. We're going to go ahead and log in through Legacy ACE. Just want to point out one thing. Right now, we're going to be logging in as a CDP user, so it might actually look a little bit different than what you would see day one. The only difference really with this view is there might be some tabs in here that you're not used to seeing. Also, we're going to have the ability to edit some information that you wouldn't necessarily be able to edit when you log in. So we're logged into Legacy ACE. We're going to go to the Accounts tab and select the Importer Account View. Again, this is all functionality as it is today. Create importer hyperlink. So first we're going to show you creating an importer. Then we're going to view that importer, maybe edit some information, and then go ahead and search for one. So all of this, again, as it is today. So for you, you would create an importer that's not associated to a top account. And my understanding is once this is created, you have to contact CDP to get them to associate this newly created importer to a top account. We're not going to show that, but that's the process that would need to be followed. So we have this new Create Importer and New ACE button instead of taking you to the existing screens where you walk through creating an importer. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And what that's going to do is it's going to launch a new tab with the new Importer Account Create screen. And we've kind of divided the screen into different sections, pretty much in alignment with the way the form is laid out. So and what we're going to do is we're going to walk through all the data elements sort of one by one. Again, if you have any questions, I believe you can type them into the chat box and we'll try to get to those as soon as we can. So in the header section, the first data element is the abbreviated importer name. When you're filling out the form, I believe there's only one name section. If the name is longer than 32 characters, you would put that into the full legal importer name, and then you would need an abbreviated name that needs to fit into that 32-character space. And that's why the abbreviated importer name, that's always going to be required. So if it's less than 32 characters, that's all you would need to fill out. But if it goes over that, you would need to fill in the full legal importer name field. For the center ID field, this particular field will always be marked as pending for any newly created importer account. At a later time, CDP would go in and assign that account to the relevant center ID, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. It's going to be auto-populated and you won't be able to change it. Next, you would, if you have a taxpayer ID that you're going to be using, you would select which one, Social Security number or IRS number. In this case, we'll select the Social Security number, and then we're going to enter it into the IR number field. If you have a doing business as name, you would select the appropriate type and then populate that into the name field if you had that information. Then you would go to type of company. Any field that has the red asterisk is required, so you'll see that those are all noted. This type was previously there. We just added one new type, I believe LLC. So we're just going to select one here. And then we get into some of the new optional data elements. So entries planned per year, not required, but you can go ahead and enter that if you would need to. This particular section, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to request the CBP assigned number even though we have a Social Security number in this instance. So we're going to go ahead and check the yes, we're requesting CBP assigned number. I have a Social Security number but wish to use. So you can choose what option applies if you are requesting a CBP assigned number. Again, another optional data element, how will this number be used? We'll just select importer of record for this example. And then program code, another optional data element. You have the 4 to choose from. So that's that. Then we get into the address information section. So to start off with, we have the mailing address. We have line 1, always required. That should actually say max 32 characters, not 64, but minor detail. Cities required. Country code. You have to choose the country code before choosing the state, so we'll go ahead and do that. Zip code and address type. If you had chosen address type of other, then you would need to put in an explanation, but we didn't do that in this situation. Then we go on to physical address. If the physical address is the same as the mailing address, you can use the button to go ahead and copy that mailing address into the physical address section. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And as you see, they copied it. And then we're on to the additional information section. Email address is required in this section, as well as phone number. Website, extension number, and fax number are all optional. And then we have related business information. So if you needed to add one here, you would go ahead and put in if it's a current or previous related business, the name of that entity, and then the number associated to that entity in one of the 3 valid formats. Next, on to company information. Again, these are all new optional data elements. You can put in the business description for the company, the NAICS code, the DUNS number, broker self-filer code, year established. You have the certificate of articles of incorporation, both country or state, and then the reference number associated to that. And then firms code and SCAT code, we can ignore those for now. And then banking information, you have your primary bank name, bank routing number, the city, the country, and the state. Again, all optional. And remember that previously, in the beginning of this example, we are requesting a CBP assigned number, and we have a Social Security number. So in that instance, a contact is mandatory. And you'll notice that the type of contact is auto-populated to principal officer, so that cannot be edited. You have to put in the first name and the last name and the Social Security number associated to that contact and the title for that contact. If you had passport information, you would be able to enter it there. If you fill out any of those passport sections, like if you put a passport number in as an example, the passport type would be required, as well as country of issuance and passport expiration date. Telephone number is a required field, so you have to enter that as well. I'm going to go ahead and hit add. So there's the contact that we added. And then we have the certification section that aligns with what's on the form. So the name is required, the certifying individual's title is required, and everything else is optional, and you do always have to check that electronic signature box. So we're going to go ahead and hit preview. When you hit that preview button, the validations, any validations are running at that point. Address standardization happens at that point. And if there are no errors, you will see a clean preview screen. Had there been errors, you would see them at the top. They would be in red. But in this case, everything was fine, so you can go ahead, go through it, make sure everything you entered is correct. And if you're satisfied with what you've entered, then you can go ahead and hit submit. Once you hit submit, you will get a pop-up box providing you with the ACE ID for that record that you've now created, and in this case, a CBP assigned number that is generated for that, and it also provides you with the abbreviated importer name, and you can go ahead and hit OK at that point. And once you hit OK, what it'll do is it'll take you automatically to the view screen. So this is the new view screen. You can see a couple of items at the top just letting you know that a bond doesn't exist for this particular importer, or there are no designated brokers found for this account that was created. So we're going to go through all the tabs here. The first tab is the account tab. Most of the information that you entered on the form will be seen under the account tab, except for contacts and addresses. Plus there's a little bit of other additional header level information in this tab, such as account status, like a CT-PAT or FAST sort of related information for partnership information, and a few other header level type details. If you needed to, well, you would only have view for this, but so we can go to the other tabs at this point. That's the account tab. The contacts tab will have the contacts. If you had any on your original creation, they would be listed here. If you needed to add contacts or add CDP responsible user here, you would be able to do so. I'm sorry. So again, we're logged in as CBP. You would not see the add CBP responsible user. So some of this, please just keep in mind that is not relevant for you. So you would just be able to add a contact in this particular scenario or update. So we'll go on to the address tab. Again, this is the mailing and physical address that you entered when you created the account. If you wanted to update it, you can go ahead and hit edit there. Okay. So now onto the Brokers tab. There's nothing here, but if you wanted to add a broker, you could do that. We can go ahead and click that so they can see it. So you can either search for an existing broker by filer code or name, or you can put in the, we'll go ahead and show you that. So this is one that we have in our environment. You can go ahead if you want to use that one, populate it. It'll populate all the information below, and then you'd have to choose the port or ports for that particular broker and a start date. You can go ahead and save it. It'll give you a confirmation that that is successfully added. And then we will go to the drawback tab. Again, in your particular situation, well, there's no privileges here, but if there were privileges, they would be view only. You wouldn't be able to edit them or add any. That would be for the drawback specialist to do. And then we have a notify parties tab. So if you had to notify parties, they would show here. And then we have a change history. So the change history, if you want to see the change history, you have to use a date range to search for the change history. In this case, we don't have anything because we just created it. But if we had an existing account that did have a change history, you would need to use a start end date search criteria to go ahead and view the change history within that time frame. That is the view screen. I think we were going to go through and show you searching. We're going to log out of here and go back to Legacy ACE. So we're going to search by name here. Again, this would be how you search today. None of this has changed. Searching will all remain in Legacy ACE. We're going to select the one that we're interested in viewing and hit OK. And instead of Legacy ACE showing you the view screen, to get to that particular account, you have to click the View Importer and New ACE button. And again, it would launch a new tab that would take you to the view screen for that particular importer account. So since we're on this particular account, we'll go ahead and show an example of editing. So we're going to hit Edit Importer Account. We'll go ahead and add a full legal name. We have to go in and add some of the required data elements like email address and phone number. So it's an important point to note if you need to make any edits to the account after the deployment date. At that point in time, these few additional data elements would be required. So be sure to have that information when you go in to make an edit. All right. Well, in theory, if you hit preview, it would run through the validations, you would confirm, and then you would hit submit. We're not sure what's going on at the moment, but we kind of saw that before on the create screen. So it would be the same concept. You go ahead and hit preview. It would take you to that full long list. Okay, it looks like it. Okay, we went ahead and hit cancel. But anyways, if it would have worked, you would hit preview, gone through everything, confirmed, and hit submit, just like you did on the create screen. I think at this point we're going to go ahead and start looking at the questions.
All right, well, one question I know that everybody has. Sorry.
We're actually going to review the questions really quickly. In the meantime, we're just going to have you guys take a couple of survey questions, and then we'll be right back on the line. Okay, so we're going to start going through the questions now. The first question that we have is CSMS 15-000263 still a valid format in ACE? That CSMS refers to ultimate consignee with all zeros. We will have to take that back. We don't have an answer for that, but we did want you to know that we'll look into that and get the answer posted. So for the next question, is the program code a program you want to be in or a program you're already in? And the answer is a program you're already in.
So the next question we have is, why is AEO an option under program code? Because based on the research we have with our team over at the Trusted Trader program, that we do have a few individuals who are categorized as authorized economic operators, and these individuals could potentially have a CT-PAT via that program. It's unusual, but it can happen, so that's why the code is. Thank you for the question.
Okay.
So the next question is, what if you are only needing to update information on an existing import? So that question is fairly straightforward. Tanya covered it during this. So say you have an IOR, an importer of record, already on file with us, and you need to update that information. After the deployment, when you update the information, you will be required to provide the new mandatory data element. Those new mandatory data elements include an email address, a phone number, which it isn't really new because you had to provide a phone number before, but it's in a new location. So some people are getting confused by that, but you always had to provide a phone number on this form when you certified. Now instead you're providing it under company information. So just in case there's any confusion, you have to have that phone number there with company information, and then the types of address. So you have to provide a mailing address, and you have to provide what type of address that is. And if that type of address is not a standard physical address location, then you'll be required to provide a physical location address, and with that a type of address. Those are the only new data elements. They should be easy enough to add in there, and you will be able to do that. If you're updating an importer, those will be the only additional requirements. Otherwise, the process should work the same. Thank you for the question. You do not have to. Okay, so this is another good question. Some people are concerned, understandably. So do we have to submit a new 5106 for an existing importer? Absolutely not. Everybody is grandfathered in who already has an IOR. You will only have to submit the new data elements or a new CBP Form 5106 if you decide to change your address or change your name, or you want to update additional information. But outside of those, if you are happy the way your information is currently displayed to CBP, you do not have to update the form. You do not have to worry about the new form for the time being. Thank you for the question. Okay, so we have another question. This one's a little trickier, but will CBP publish preferred formatting for suites, apartments, and abbreviations? I believe there's a directive on cbp.gov that provides a lot of information on how we typically abbreviate this. And when we put together our FAQ, which will be either, I would say, today or Monday next week, we will make sure that that directive is linked to. But what you should keep in mind is the CATER also provides some abbreviations as well that you will have to use for this, for certain states in Mexico and Canada. But it's a good question, and we'll try to provide more clarity on it when we get that FAQ up either tomorrow or on Monday. So the email address provided should be for the importer of record. The next question we have is, whose email address do we put? It should be for the importer of record. So whatever the primary email address for trade functions at your organization is, or if you're an individual who is engaging in import activities, then it should be your email address. But remember, it is the importer of records email address that should be submitted. Not the broker's, not anyone else's, but the importer of record. Now, if you don't have an email address in the unlikely situation and you do all your business through your broker, please feel free to use their email address. But ideally, it should be the importer of record's email address. Okay, Tanya, is this a question you want to take offline, or do we want to?
I think they're asking, kind of related to the form,
Okay.
because the entity can be previous or current. And they're asking, what's the logic for putting a previous related entity?
But, so are they talking?
Related business.
This question confuses me because are you referring to Section 3 of the form where we put related businesses?
That's what it sounds like.
When
Maybe
you
can
say
clarify.
previous related entity, we're really just looking for related entities. I don't understand exactly what's meant by the term previous, but I can tell you what we're looking for there are other businesses that are closely associated with that business, maybe in partnership with or other matters along those lines. So for that particular question, what I'd actually recommend is could you email the 5106 at cbp.dhs.gov a slightly more explanatory version of that question? Because I think that will help us really give you the answer you're looking for, because just based on that quick hit, I don't think I'm giving you what you want. So if you could please email that question to 5106-5106 at cbp.dhs.gov. I will do my best to review it, and if appropriate, add it to the FAQ list tomorrow, and of course, send you a response individually. Thank you. Okay, so there's some, understandably, this is a new form, a new procedure, but so we have one question here. How would you have a Social Security number if you're requesting a CBP assigned number for a foreign importer? Well, what Tanya was walking you through is we have a new feature, and this new feature allows domestic importers with Social Security numbers to, instead of putting those numbers on all their customs documents, to choose to have a CBP assigned number given to them, provided that they give one contact with a Social Security number. Now, that only applies to individuals with a Social Security number, an SSN. Everyone else who's foreign, who does not have a Social Security number, does not have an EIN, an IRS number, an employer identification number, would continue like they did in the past. They would select. So I'm not sure if you have the form open with you. Give me 1 minute here, but I just want to make sure that I have the exact block number in front of me so no one's getting confused. But if you have the form, and you can go to cbp.gov, if you go to CBP Form 5106, we have a landing page, and you go to the new form, it's right on the site. You can click on the link, and there'll be a test form that is almost identical to what you're going to see except with draft markings. But if you look at Block 1E, this question is referring to Block 1E. You'll notice there are a number of options. Only one of those options on Block 1E is, I have a Social Security number, comma, but wish to use a CBP assigned number on all my entry documents. If you select that option, then you provide a Social Security number. However, if you choose any of the other options, you are not required to provide a Social Security number, and that is how we handle foreign importers. But thank you for asking that question, because it's important to clarify this. The process is still virtually the same for those importers. So a question we have from Joy Grundy is, if we are completing a 5106 form just to update a mailing address or official place of business, I think business address, is there a shorter form? So I can't speak to ABI, and I'll turn that over to Tanya, but I can tell you this much. If you're submitting a soft copy of the form to either CBP personnel in the field or CBP personnel at OF, the Office of Finance, you will have to submit the entire form with all its data elements filled out. You cannot just submit a partially filled out form requesting. So, for instance, you can't just put the current IOR number and say, I want this address. You'll have to completely fill out the new form with the appropriate legal business name and with all the other information. Any information that's not included on that updated form would be disregarded. So when they updated your address, they would drop that information if you didn't provide it again. Now, I'll turn it over to Tanya, but I believe it's a similar process if they want to update an ABI.
Right, so the ABI requirements completely mimic the requirements of the form. So it's no different. If you need to update it through ABI, the required data elements will all need to be there on that update filing.
So the bottom line is no shorter version of the form. I know that's not ideal, but it's the process we're working with. Thank you for the question. Okay, so I see here Sydney Speck, again, a little bit of confusion about this CBP assigned number. She's asking if a CBP assigned number is requested, is the contact name exec required? The contact name, contact social security number is only required if a CBP assigned number is requested for somebody with a social security number. If a CBP assigned number is requested for a foreign entity or foreign individual, no contact is required. That means no name is required, no passport number is required, no social security number is required. The only time a contact is required on Section 3 of the form, 3J, is if you choose that option. I have a social security number, but I'm choosing to use a CBP assigned number instead for basically privacy reasons. So that's the only time you would be required to provide a contact. In all other instances, no contact information is required. Okay, so we have a question from Tim Pete. Must all 5106s be filed in ACE? We file via our own operating system and surety company. So I believe, Pete, yes, they all go through ACE, but when you file, we have software vendors who would work with ABI to process your request. So it's a little confusing, but every single CBP Form 5106 goes through ACE. So if you submit a soft copy of the form to the Office of Finance or our field personnel at the various ports of entry, we are essentially taking that form and uploading it to ACE. So when you work with your surety company or a broker, they're doing the same thing. They may have their own software interface between them and the automated commercial environment. But again, they're putting it through ACE. So yes, the answer to that question is it all goes through ACE. Okay, we've got Karen Quintana. I shouldn't even pronounce last names like that because I butcher them every time. So her question is, if there was a designated broker, what would be shown? Would it say who the broker is? So I think this is more of an ABI question. I'm going to turn it over to Tanya and team.
No, it's not ABI. This is specific to the portal. I think they're referring to the broker tab. I think they're referring to the broker tab.
Okay.
I don't remember what's in the broker tab. I think it just has the name and, give me one second. It'll have a filer code and a broker name and then the ports associated to that broker with the start date and end date if applicable.
So it essentially would show you who the broker is. It might not show the individual at the brokerage who's assigned to your account, but it will show you the overall information for the broker. And again, that's for the portal. You will go into the portal and you will see it there. All right. So our next question, which group at CBP will be linking the importer number with the top account? Which group at CBP will be linking the importer number with the top account? I'm a little confused by this question. I'm not sure if you're referring to, for example, requesting a division and then having a main account that the division is linked to. So maybe this would be a good one to email the 5106 mailbox, because if you send it to me and provide a little more information, I can get you a better answer for that. But you need to clarify. Are you asking about a division where you have a division that's sharing a IOR number with a bigger headquarters company, or what's going on in that situation? Because that's not quite enough information to answer.
I think they're talking about when an importer account is created, there is someone in CBP, not sure who, so I don't have an answer to the question, that links that importer account to a top account if needed.
Okay.
There is a linking done by someone in CBP.
Okay.
We don't know exactly who that is.
Off the top of our head.
We'll have to figure that out. Yeah.
We can definitely get back to you on that.
Yep.
So if you email the 5106 mailbox, thank you, Tanya, for the clarification, but just email us there and we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible. Okay. System does not verify format of numbers.
I think you're referring to the IR number. It does verify the format of it. So if you have any further questions, let us know.
So this is a question, and we're really not in a position to answer a lot of questions like these, so I just want to read it so everyone's aware. If we skip over your question, this is why. So Kelly Danks is asking, what would be the benefit, I should say, to the importer of having banking information entered on the form? It has to do with risk assessment. I can't go into any more detail at this time. I just want everyone to know if you're an existing IOR, importer of record, in good standing with CBP, you do not need to worry about these additional data elements. We're not going to start stopping your shipments because one day we implement the form. If you're in good standing, not something to worry about. It is primarily for new importers or importers who are in poor standing with CBP. But at this time, I cannot answer questions that have to do with what the banking account information would be used for, how it would be valuable to CBP. That's not a question we'll discuss on this webinar any further. Thank you. Okay, so we have another question here about what does CBP responsible user mean? And Tanya, jump in if I'm wrong on this, but typically a CBP responsible user would be someone like a client rep who is assigned to an account for assistance purposes. So you're a big importer, you have a client rep who works with you regularly, and you want them connected to your account so if you're having issues, they can jump in, they can look at your information, look at your IOR. That is typically who the CBP responsible user would be. Okay, so I was actually about to jump to this one first. So we have a question, what about updating periodic monthly statements for ACH? So the process for updating periodic monthly statements is going to stay the same. It is the same that you're used to, and as a matter of fact, none of the new data elements will be required when you use that writing the PMS activation standard process. So the current process, as it has been presented to me by the Office of Finance now, is individuals with PMS will submit a CBP Form 5106 with PMS activation written on top of it, scan it, send it over to periodic statements at cbp.dhs.gov, and from there, they will be processed. The process for that is staying the same, and furthermore, none of the new mandatory data elements will be required for that process. You will not be required to provide 2E, the email address. You'll not be required to provide the type of address. You still have to provide your physical location address and the mailing address, but you will not be required to provide the type for those particular data elements if you are doing the periodic monthly statement. And I hope that answers your question. If you need additional information, again, please email us at 5106@cbp.dhs.gov. So what does ad broker do for the importer? I feel this is a fairly straightforward question. If you add an importer, wouldn't it give the importer the ability to work on your behalf? Or?
Well, that particular tab, my understanding is it just denotes that this is the broker that files for you if you don't happen to be a broker. It doesn't do anything in the system as far as I know. It's just kind of like informational tab. There's a question about, again, the broker tab. Is this the port the broker is in or the broker will clear in? Good question. We'll have to get clarification on that.
Okay, so we have a question. I think I understand it, so I'm going to do my best to answer it as I understand it. If your company is already set up, do you need to make an edit to include info that is not there or added, new to start over? So as we mentioned earlier, if you already exist and you're happy with your information, you do not need to submit the new data element. You do not need to submit a new CBP Form 5106. The only time if you need to do that, if you currently are an importer of record but you in the future wish to change your name, change your address, or to add those data elements, that would be when you would be required to submit a new form. But once this is implemented, if you are a current importer of record who is happy with their information, you do not have to submit a new 5106. It's not required. So this is a good question. We have another broker question here. We're going to reach out to this individual one-on-one and try to get more information and get back to you. Okay, so we have a great question. How do we know what data is optional and what data is mandatory? So if you look through the form, you'll see that there are red asterisks next to certain data elements. Those will tell you what data elements are mandatory and what are not. I will make one note here. Based on how the form was approved by OMB, there's a red star, an asterisk, I should say, next to 1E, Block 1E. You do not have to fill out Block 1E if you provide either an Internal Revenue Service number or a Social Security number. But in order for this form to get approval, we needed to make it abundantly clear that you did not have to provide that information and could instead request a CBP assigned number if that's the route you wish to go. But other than that, everything else with a little red asterisk next to it on the form itself, if you go to that, if you go to cbp.gov and you go to the CBP Form 5106 page and look at the new form for testing, you can go through it and you can see that they have red asterisks next to the data elements you need. And I believe the CATER will also tell you what data elements are required. So if you're using ABI for this, you can go on cbp.gov and you can find the new CATER for the 5106, and that will also tell you required data elements.
Yes, so there's a question about, does CBP enter importer information on the importer module, for example, the drawback data? Right, so as an example, the drawback tab would have the drawback privileges associated to that IR number. It would be drawback specialist. If privileges needed to be added for that IR number, they would be done by CBP personnel. And of course, CBP personnel can edit information associated to that account if needed, more than just the drawback information, but other parts of that account information. There's a question about if an importer participates in the freeze program, would their contact information be listed in the Notify Parties tab? I'm not sure. Follow-up question back to you is that what you would see today? If your account is frozen, my understanding is that only CBP can make updates or changes to that account. I think you're asking if you would be your own notify party in the event that someone tried to make a change, you would be notified. But if you could provide a little more clarification on that, that would be helpful.
So we've got a question on how to request a new IR suffix, but we're running out of time here, so I think this is something that would be best for the FAQ. So this is something you can see either this coming Friday or Monday next week on our FAQ. We'll try to come up with a more elaborate response to that question, but it's a little tricky, so I don't want to spend too much time on it right now.
Question, if our software has updated our system, can we just transmit this info through our system and not the ACE portal? The answer to that is yes. Again, similar question. Using the ACE portal is an alternative to submitting 5106 via ABI, correct? The answer is yes.
So we've got another question about how do brokers get access to the import or account data. That's in the same line with divisions. We're going to give you a more robust response to that in the FAQ.
Deployment in ACE portal and ABI are both on the same date, correct? Yes. Both this user interface that you've seen and the ABI transaction will both be deploying on 3/16, along with the KI query, the updated KI query. There's a question about when creating an account for an importer from Mexico, have the issues been resolved? When entering the addresses in Mexico are listed as street name - street number, but in old ACE it would allow that format. One would have to it wouldn't allow that format. One would have to manipulate the information provided in order for ACE to accept the record. I believe that you would still have that issue going forward. The same types of validations on the address are going to be occurring, so I believe you would still have that issue.
So this question should be quick and easy to answer. So we've got a question from Thomas here. Why did you enter a physical address when it was the same as the mailing address? So how the form's set up, right? You have to have a mailing address. And if that mailing address is proven to not be a physical address, then you have to provide a physical location address. In the example given, because the mailing address was a physical location address, Tanya was able to copy it over and it covered both sections. So you didn't have to re-enter it, it just merely copied it over and verified that both parts of that, it was both a mailing address and a physical address. Now there may be some instances where you provide a mailing address to a P.O. box, and then you have to provide a physical location address to a company building or a warehouse, because we need that hard address for your company for our enforcement purposes.
I think that might have been a bad example. We were just doing it to show you that you can copy it, but yeah.
So we have a question here, is the ACE portal the only way to submit 5106? Well, the ACE portal is the primary way that CBP personnel will submit a 5106, but brokers, and Tanya, jump in if I'm wrong, can use the automated broker interface via their software vendors. I mean, in essence, it's almost like the same thing. It's just that brokers can have their own portal, their own view to input this information. But the vast majority of CBP personnel, and if you submit the form to those individuals, will be using the portal to upload the data.
There's a question about if a broker creates the account, will the broker info be added to the account automatically? The answer is no. There's a question. We'll have to put this in the FAQ. For acquisitions, will we now be required to create an importer, or can a national account manager pull the account over to our ACE portal account? We'll have to get back to you on that one.
You will be able to use, so we have a question, will we still be able to utilize ABI to file this, or only the ACE portal? You can utilize ABI or the ACE portal. Both are options.
Yeah, we've answered that a few times, so we won't answer that again. Can you go down? There's a question about when a broker port is added to an IOR, will this cause a rejection of the entry transmission if the filer code is not assigned for that port? My understanding is no. Don't believe cargo release is looking at this particular information at all.
Okay, so we've gotten to the end of our time here, and it looks like we have a lot more questions. So,
one more thing,
oh,
Evelyn,
sorry.
Just, and you can answer this. Where will the FAQ, when and where will the FAQ be available?
So let's just say Monday. I want to give us a little more time to go over this. So the FAQ will be available Monday. It will not contain necessarily all the questions. We'll be adding and updating it, but it will be available on the landing page for the CBP form 5106 on cbp.gov. So we have a landing page, and that's where we'll upload the FAQ, the link to the FAQ page, to the list page.
And I think we'll go ahead and post this recording at that same landing page.
Yes, we can also have a link to this recording posted there. I believe it will be on the ACE outreach page technically, but we'll also have a link that connects there from our page. Now, one last thing before we end. There was some confusion in the CATER about CBP assigned numbers. And I think we addressed this briefly, but I want to make it abundantly clear that you can, with CBP assigned numbers, anyone who may have missed our previous comments on this, CBP assigned numbers can be updated with ABI. You do not have to fax a 5106 to the Office of Finance. You don't have to email a 5106 or mail it to the Office of Finance. You can take a CBP assigned number and you can update that using ABI without contacting CBP. So I wanted to make that clear because I know that was a confusion in the CATER, and I believe that's being updated.
Yeah, so that will be posted probably by tomorrow with the update.
So on that note, thank you so much for your time. I will work with the team here to get all these questions and do my best to get responses to many of them and post those that seem the most relevant on that FAQ list. Again, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, and we appreciate you working with us to get this implemented. It's been a quick turnaround thanks to the government shutdown. We know it didn't give us as much time as we might have liked to really get it together, but I think we have done a great job. We're seeing our rates uptick, and things are going well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.